Well, welcome to Impromptu, the game for thinkers. I'm really excited. This is my mom, guys, and so I'm excited to have my mom with us. So here's how Impromptu works. It's a fun game. It's Impromptu / Let's Go is what I call it, right? Okay. And so I'm going to just give you three what I think are really cool thoughts, and we'll take 5 minutes with each one just to have a 5-minute conversation. No prep, no time, just throw them at you. And then we'll just have a 5-minute conversation. At the end of that, Mr. Nate will tell us when the 5 minutes is over, and we have to stop the conversation no matter what. And so we're going to do 3 rounds. I'm going to throw one out, and then we'll chat for 5 minutes. He'll stop us, and then I'll do it again, and we'll do that 3 times. Okay. So here's round 1. All right. And you know me, so I think you'll like this one. All right. So I have been told that I am not very emotional. But I would say I'm very emotional. I try to feel goodness as often as possible.
I agree that you are emotional.
Wait, okay, that's no. I thought you were gonna go, but okay, all right.
No. I agree that you are emotional. I think if people, I think what happens with you, you're like a problem solver. So that's how you look at life from that perspective before you even have the feeling about it. So what you do is you're like, oh, here's a situation. So I can't feel about that. I've got to solve.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, right? So I would argue that, or I would propose, because you told me you don't like the word arguing. I know, yeah. I would propose that by doing that, what I allow myself to feel is goodness in every situation, right? So my goal is to feel goodness all the time, right? That's what I genuinely believe. And those who have watched the channel will know that's because of the way I think of God. But my goal is to feel goodness all of the time. And so what happens is when I have an emotion, I think about that emotion and I say, what would I like to feel in this moment? And usually it's some form of goodness. And so I would say I'm very emotional, just not in the way that other people do. I just choose my emotion.
Well, if that's possible to choose.
Well, that's the question. Is it possible to choose your emotion? Do you think so?
I think it's possible to kind of maneuver yourself into the feeling that you want to have. Yes, I do. I think that's very possible. And not only think it's possible, I think it's very important because I think if we let everything that comes into our lives have the feeling, have an emotion.
Dictate our feelings to us,
dictate how we're supposed to act, we'll all be a bunch of crazy acting people. Mm-hmm. So I think, I just think that maybe you do it on a higher level than.
Well, you're my mother, so of course you would think that. But I think it's the very concept of choosing our emotions is the foreign one, right? And so that's why I like this statement, right? Because most people don't think you get to choose your emotion, right? And so what happens is instead they feel like their emotion comes to them. But I would say, no, what if you could choose it, right? And I actually propose that it's a great way to handle almost any situation, right? For instance, disappointment is one that I love, right? Whenever someone is afraid that they're about to face disappointment, right? They might get an answer they don't want. Something might happen they don't want. What I ask them is, in the worst case scenario, how would you like to feel? If the worst circumstances happen, how would you like to feel, right? And what that does is that pre-preps you so that when the worst scenario happens, if it does, you know exactly how you would like to feel, right? And so you feel that.
Well, I think that's good, but I'm not so sure that everybody can do that. That's what I'm saying. Most people, to me personally, are not aware or maybe in charge or what's the word I want to use? They're not responsible. I shouldn't say responsible, but they can't handle their own emotions. I mean, and plus that people like you, son, I think are so reasonable that the logical thing comes up. I don't think most people allow themselves to let the logical come up.
I don't think it's logical. I think it's spiritual, right? And what I mean is, I think the very idea, so this goes back a second. And so I think of emotions themselves as spiritual, right? Because if you think about it, where is happiness, right? How do you experience it? You might feel it in your body, but you also experience it in some way that's non-physical, right? Anything that's non-physical in our culture, we dub spiritual, right?
Yes.
So if you experience emotions non-physically, then they're spiritual, right? And so then I say, well, spiritually, Jesus told us how to handle the spiritual realm, right? Scripture tells us, not Jesus specifically, but scripture tells us whatever thoughts are noble, whatever thoughts are good, think on these things, right? Jesus turns around and says, hey, I give you joy. He says, here's peace, right? So we're instructed in how to deal with ourselves spiritually. But what I think is most of the time, we don't think of emotions, we don't think of ourselves from the spiritual nature. Whereas I truly believe that as a human being, I am physical some, but I am just as much spiritual, right? Right. And a lot of people would agree, but we don't function that way.
Well, here's the thing. I think most people would say to you that you're not, you say that you're doing that, but what you've done is you've pushed down your feelings and you choose which one to let come up.
Right.
And I don't think that, I think that's probably what you're doing. I don't know if you're pushing down sadness, for instance.
Mr. Nate was very gentle with you. Thank you, Mr. Nate, for being gentle with my mother. But that's our time, so we have to switch now. Okay. All right. We ready for another one?
Well, but I'm not done with that one.
I know. That's the issue of the game, right? It's a thinking. I know. It's kind of frustrating, isn't it? But it's kind of cool, too.
We'll talk about that again.
Yeah, we'll revisit that one. All right, so here's another one.